Here he is for more than a quarter century of TSN's West Coast and Vancouver bureau chief. We find him in Chicago where he's taken in Bears training camp. And, of course, there was a big football game to talk about in the Alberta capital on Saturday. It is Mr. Farhan Lalji back with Sekeres and Price. How are you?
You know, I can't get you to get me on your show until I'm around your Bears. Is that how this goes?
No. It was just coincidence.
Oh, yeah, just coincidence.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
coincidence.
Yeah.
I knew he was down south. I knew he was dropping in on the Bears. But after the Lions put up that performance, I said we got to go to Farhan and get his 2 cents. But, if you'd like to sing the praises of Justin Fields and Abbotsford's Chase Claypool, that works too, Farhan. Very jealous of your assignment today.
Yeah, you would have been jealous here just walking through just the Bears facility here at Hallis Hall. The last time I went, they were in Bourbonnais when Mark Trestman was making his debut as the Bears coach close to a decade ago now. And so doing it here, my first chance to get to Hallis Hall and the facility as it's set up now, just spectacular. Just all the, the NFL experience type of activities. But as far as your boy Justin, he looks good. He looks comfortable in this offense. He spent time, brought his receivers down to Florida with him. They developed some good chemistry. And, I think Chase Claypool is in a good position to succeed this year, having understood the playbook, gone through camp. I know there's been some criticism about him, really the last couple of off seasons, but this is a big year for him. He knows it. And Fields has set the bar really high for himself. Thinks he can get 4,000 yards passing to go along with 1,000 yards rushing. And, watching him today, the one thing that really stood out to me, Matt, you'll like this. He was calm, right? There were even some moments where he had to scramble, and rather than trying to force something, he just threw it out of bounds and just tried to practice doing that. There was a moment where it was like 1st and 20 in a 2-minute drill, and he threw a deep ball into double coverage that was probably ill-advised. But those things barely happen now, according to everyone that's watching in the week. He's set up for
Farhan, I'm really calm about my NFL season, too. It's July 31st, all right? I should hope that he's calm. Did you talk to Chase Claypool, by the way? Did you actually have a conversation about it with him?
Yeah, no, we spent about 15 minutes together at the end of practice. Just finished with him, actually. And, I go back with Chase quite a ways. And I've had a chance to go interview him since his days at Notre Dame, and obviously knew him while he was still in high school. So he knows the magnitude of the season. And I asked him, I said, is that pressure good for you? Knowing that, the club's got some pressure because they have to justify the investment in the trade. I mean, that basically turned into a first-round pick, right? Because it was a 32nd pick overall. And for him, I don't think he expected to be in this situation after that brilliant rookie year that he had, but he says the pressure's going to work for him. And as long as he can stay healthy, he thinks he's going to have a big year. He really took a lot of pains to learn this offense and found his own way to do it, but held himself accountable. And you could tell by the way they practiced him today, they were moving him around into a bunch of different spots. And, he's going to have opportunities to play in a lot of areas, and they'll take advantage of his size and skill set. So it'll be good for him.
I had a friend play a trick on me on the weekends. Go, do you think Justin Fields can get to 1,500 rushing yards this year? And I went, that's probably a little much. And then they said, bigger question, do you think he can get to 1,500 passing yards? Which may not be a sure bet. I haven't checked Bodog on that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that update on my NFL team, Farhan. You're very gracious. How about these British Columbia Lions? You've been covering the Canadian Football League for a long time. Have you ever seen a better defense through 2 months?
It's been a minute. That year the Lions started the year 11-0, their defense looked exquisite, right, before things kind of fell apart. And look, they've been healthy, and they've had one guy here and there that's been out from time to time, but they've got so much depth, right? And you've got to give a ton of credit to Neil McAvoy and Ryan Rickmaiden and even Rick Campbell because, he also wears part of that GM hat. They have brought in depth. They have cultivated depth. They have taught them well. And so that's the thing is all of a sudden you lose a linebacker. Like as good as Boseko Lacombo has been, he was supposed to be the third guy at linebacker and rotate in because they thought this would be Josh Wood's time, and they're just rotating guys. And one thing I just love, this, Matt, if you tackle well, you're always going to be ahead, right? And that, you look at some of these games the Lions have played, and they've just been in perfect spots, and they just don't miss tackles. So that makes it easy on the coordinator. It makes it easy when you're injured, and it makes it easy on the offense. Because you look at that game this past game in Edmonton, and even though Dane Evans threw for, in and around 300 yards, he didn't get asked to do a lot, right? The way the plays were called, it was almost a case of let's not screw this up. Punting is okay. We're not going to turn it over because we know they can't score on our defense. And that's the way it played out. And between that and a ridiculous number of Edmonton penalties, the game was over before it could start.
Blake asked me, what's the record for shutouts in a season by a CFL team?
2.
So they're tied it already.
Yeah, and the last time a team has shut out the same team twice was the second year of the existence of the formal CFL in 1959. So
we're talking rugby union days.
Yeah.
Almost.
So
depth, and they don't miss tackles, but is there anything they're doing schematically, Farhan, that is confusing others? Like, are they, like, is Ryan Phillips genius here and nobody can catch up to him, or is it just good ball players playing a...
I think truly it's the fact that they understand the scheme, right? And the point I've made is, go back 3 years ago, right? When Rick Campbell first came, this team in 2021 was really, really bad defensively. And they used to miss tackles left and right. And I remember calling games talking about what a poor tackling team they were. And they were that the previous year before COVID when Devon Claybrooks was the head coach. But what happened in 21 is they brought in so many players that were young and they had to learn the league and learn the game. So if you look at their starting 12, they've got 6 starters that have been with the team 1 or 2 years, right? Like, that doesn't happen, right? So they've learned the defense together. Ryan's kind of got comfortable with his team and how he likes to call the game during those 2 years. So it's not the scheme, it's that they understand the scheme and they're perfectly positioned whenever teams want to, show different looks and different motions and different shifts. They know how to adjust and they never get caught out of position.
Let me play devil's advocate, and we'll open this up beyond just defense. We'll say offense as well. Is there anything being supported by toothpicks here, or are these all concrete foundations at every position? Is there anything you're concerned about that if that goes, and you kind of alluded to the injury problem that they've had that good luck going for them at the very least. That's always a concern. But just schematically, depth-wise, is one guy a Band-Aid solution that you're worried that Band-Aid might get peeled off, or is this legitimately a juggernaut?
No, I think it's a juggernaut. And there's 3 really good teams in the CFL right now. I mean, Toronto and Winnipeg are there and could beat BC at any moment, and that wouldn't be a blight on their record. But look, They had games this year where they played without Keon Hatcher and Dominic Rhymes. Lucky Whitehead has missed games. They've now had to replace their quarterback. Look at every other team completely incapable of replacing a quarterback. Even with the running back, right? Smoke Mazzell had to miss a couple games. They put in Sean Shivers. They were just fine. The interesting part is the offensive line has been healthy from start to finish. And what happens if one of those guys gets hurt, right? Because when you look at the O-line from last year to this year, they replaced the center, left guard, and left tackle. Everybody had been in the building, right? So they were able to step in and take advantage of the fact that they knew what they had. Those guys knew the system. They knew how they were being coached. But now, if those guys have to leave, like, is David Neville ready to be a full-time guard? What's going to happen if they've got to take out one of the tackles? So we've just got less of a sample size with those players. So they've been incredibly healthy along the offensive line, and they really have been for the last couple of seasons. So I'm curious to see what would happen there. But everywhere else, they've managed to overcome injury.
You talked about those juggernaut teams. We discussed it off the top of the show, so I'll pose it to you. Is that a concern to you right now? We're not at season's end yet, but if that held, if we had 3 have teams and the rest of the league was 500 at best, is that a concern for you?
From a league perspective?
Yeah.
The records don't concern me, right? These things ebb and flow. It's nice to see the East is a little bit better and has tipped the scales, but what concerns me league-wide is the quarterback play, right? Like, overall, quarterback play hasn't been good, and, it got to the point where Bo Levi Mitchell lost his job and actually got a raise, right, by a team. Trevor Harris lost his job and wound up getting a big salary, right? Trevor Harris, 500. He got $500,000. Matt's favorite, Cody Fajardo, got a good job and a good opportunity, right? And so there are some guys that we've seen some fines, right? Like, we've seen Dustin Crum in Ottawa, and that's been a nice thing. But generally, the quarterback play, the lack of depth at the quarterback position. People talk about the Lions and how they did great getting Dane Evans. You know what's great about it? He was the only good backup quarterback available. Like, nobody else could, because that other guy didn't exist anywhere else. So that concerns me. And seeing an organization and a record and a team as poor as Edmonton and what's happening there, I think that's a bad look on the entire league, right? Yeah. Like, in this league where there's a rouge available, no team should ever be shut out. Even if you get dominated, you shouldn't be shut out. So to see Edmonton the way it is and just the overall quarterback concerns I have, I think those are the concerns more so than teams being 500. Parity.
Well, I mean, to lose 20 in a row and then for the bottom not yet to have been hit and get shut out at home in the 21st. Good God, how things have changed in the Alberta capital. So, as JPAD notes, they have pretty much guaranteed themselves a home playoff game almost already because of the state of the Alberta teams and Saskatchewan. And Farhan, if they win in Winnipeg Thursday, a second win in Winnipeg this season, they would hold all tiebreakers. Like, we can pretty much get to planning the West Final at BC Place, right?
Yeah, and wouldn't that be incredible, right? Because the fan base is slowly starting to respond, and you give Amar Doman and Dwayne Villeneuve that much time to plan. Like we could approach 40,000 for attendance for that game, right? And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but hey, why not, right? Like you talked about it on Thursday, if they win that game, they'd get the tiebreaker as well. And now the fans could just get excited. And what's been great this year is so many people told me last year what got them excited about the Lions was Nathan Rourke, right? And now Nathan goes, and yet momentum has been able to carry, right? So the fact that the owner's committed as much as he has, everyone has seen that, but they're doing the little things right. You've seen what their content team has done before and after every game. If you go to those pre-game parties that they have, the backyard parties outside at Terry Fox Plaza, it doesn't have to be an LL Cool J concert. Those are fun evenings no matter what. I mean, I remember doing the pre-game show at 10:40 back in the day, and Matt, you and I were on together, and Mary would make you food, remember? And I'd get in trouble because I didn't bring all the bags over. And it was you and I and friends and family. Like, it was nobody on the plaza. And now the plaza's packed. It's a good time. So they're doing the right things. And I think all of a sudden, if you gave them excellence and a destination with a championship Western Final available to them, I think the fans would absolutely come out in big numbers.
I miss Mary's paper bag lunches. If you're ever by Wall Center, stop on by.
Yeah, but she had the glass containers, and they were so heavy.
I know. She goes. She doesn't do anything halfway, Farhan. She's all in.
She
all
is.
right.
Hey, you mentioned
she packs those lunches with intensity.
You mentioned Nathan Rourke. Any early reporting there?
Yeah, I went down to Jacksonville. I was there 2 days ago and had a chance to visit with Nathan and talk to coaches about him. Visited with the offensive coordinator. They really like him. He's impressed them. Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, said his talent is evident, right? Like, you can see an arm strength that wasn't there when he played collegiately. So they think physically he absolutely belongs. They're really impressed with how he's learned the offense from the spring OTAs and mini camps to now. However, he's not getting a significant amount of reps. Like, I know that when he signed, his hope was to compete for number 2. He wasn't surprised when they signed CJ Beathard, he and his agent. They knew that was a real possibility. And they gave him a $2 million signing bonus. So, you knew he was going to get the edge, but I thought there was going to be a bit more of a divide, maybe a 60-40 Beathard-Rourke in terms of reps with the seconds and thirds. But it's been it's really been 80-20, right? CJ Beathard has gotten way more reps, and it's been tough, right, for Nathan just to get used to that and finding a way to take mental reps. So the preseason is going to be everything for him. If he can light it up in the preseason, he's going to get a ton of reps there. It will earn him more practice reps, which is what he wants, right? And then, after that, you're an injury away. But everything he's been allowed to do, he's done well. He needs to be allowed to do more.
Right.
Yes, and pulling for him, I was saying to Blake here off air, I'd like nothing more than to see Nathan Rourke go light up a couple of preseason games and forward his career. We are obliged to ask you about the Vancouver Canucks because we're July 31st. We're making the turn. We're making the turn to August 1st. Do you see them making another move in the summer, Farhan?
Well, it feels like they have to, right? I mean, unless they want to operate on a knife's edge with 20 players or 21 players to get themselves under the cap, because even if Pearson plays and Pullman doesn't, they're 1.8, almost 1.8 over. So there's got to be something there. I know that Meyer's name has come up a little bit more in rumors in the last couple of days. They still think that's going to be a complicated transaction, but it seems to be the only one they could potentially make because nobody wants Garland at this stage. So, it's possible, but I still don't see it happening. I think this is going to be complicated for them going through training camp, trying to get off the remaining money, but they're certainly not in a position to try to add at all. But, can they subtract? We'll see.
They've got to subtract Myers and bring in the third line center. I think that is the master plan, while getting cap compliant all in one fell swoop.
All in a few weeks from September 1 to September 21st.
Right.
Yeah, just
now,
that.
Answer me, just because last week we did a theme on the Canucks and contending. How far out do you think they are, Farhan?
Oh, wow. Like, I think they're probably at least 3 pieces from contending, right? I mean, you talk about that third-line center spot. I want to see something. There's still a bunch of wingers on this team. We think they're winger-heavy, but there's a lot of guys with a lot to prove, right? Whether it's, can Kuzmenko do it his second year? Can Podkolzin be a full-time guy? Can Höglander be a full-time guy? Like, we think these guys are on the cusp, but as we've said before, right, potential is just something you haven't done yet. So let's see if potential can turn to reality, but they need more scoring, right? So these guys have got to show they can score from the wings, but depth down the middle, a right-handed shot down the middle, and one more piece on the back end I think they need for sure. So, could they get into the playoffs this year if they stay healthy and don't play themselves out of it in November? They could, but they're a bubble roster. But they're at least 3 solid pieces away from contending in my mind.
Are you covering the game Thursday?
No, I am flying to Calgary to do the Stamps game on Friday, and then more NFL next week. But I'll be watching it. So
I'm surprised you were out of town for Canadian Track and Field Championships, your Olympic beat, which was going on at Langley this weekend. And
can't do it all, buddy. Can't do it all.
I know. I mean, there's only one Farhan Lalji to go around, but it may inform your answer to the next question on the Bodog poll question today. And I know you're not a soccer guy, but Christine Sinclair, has there ever been a better athlete in a Team Canada jersey than Burns?
Of any sort.
Sinclair.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think so. And I heard the question coming into the segment, and I thought about names like, Sidney Crosby, whether it was wearing a World Junior Championship jersey or an Olympic jersey, and Gretzky, who didn't necessarily have a significant amount of Olympic success because of when it became an NHL sport, and Steve Nash had a couple of runs, but I don't think so. When you look at what she's done and the fact that there's no age requirement for women's soccer at the Olympics like there is for men's soccer, she's been able to experience more internationally than everybody, and she's done it at the highest levels, right? So you've got to give her full credit. I mean, is there a women's hockey player out there that jumps out? I don't know. And, for me, like, hockey's still a sport played by 7 countries, right? Whereas
that's right.
Soccer,
That's it.
Soccer is the game. Mm-hmm. And even though it's women's soccer, which is more growing than the men's game, I can't think of anybody but Christine. I remember her at Burnaby South when she was 16 and covering her for the first time then. So even though I'm not necessarily a soccer guy, I do appreciate the career she's had.
Yes.
I've watched it from start to finish.
And you're old enough to have covered a teenage Christine Sinclair
Sadly.
and a 40-year-old
Sadly.
Christine Sinclair. Yeah. Look, Cindy Klassen, Andre DeGrasse, Penny Alexiak, Clara Hughes in 2 sports. We've been blessed to watch a lot of great Canadian athletes, but Christine stands there with anybody internationally. Great hearing your voice and seeing you. Travel safely. Give my best to Justin and Chase and everybody there in Chicago. And we'll see you back here at a Lions game coming up.
All right. Thanks, guys. Look forward to it.
This great clip brought to you by, wait for it, Great Clips. It's going to be great.